What is good, you guys? This is Steven with All Talk On, and we're finally going to get around to doing my $200 budget build. So we're finally here, taking a look at my $200 build. Apologies for the wait. Once again, you guys, I've been telling you excuses. I'm just busy. That's all there is to it. So we're going to go ahead and rush through the parts list so we can give you guys some of the performance that I was able to get. And I did get some pretty intense deals. So the first one up, you guys might have seen for my $40 legacy old school gaming PC, codename Vintage. And that was the PC that I picked up off of a guy in a very nice neighborhood of town. Was selling it for 50 bucks on Craigslist. I was able to get it for 40 in total, and it was a complete computer, but I did only use some of the parts, so we'll go through the parts that I did use. The first part was the thermaltake CPU cooler. I don't know the make and model. I really didn't look. I just kind of was like, it's a cooler. Let's just slap it on. Had to do a little bit of custom fitting with a bracket to make it mount to an AMD CPU, but I did get it to work. The next part I used was the Coolermaster Cosmos case, which is a gigantic full tower case, and keeps all the parts in there very nice. Has a lot of sound dampening foam, but it is extremely heavy and extremely big. But for what I paid for it, it was definitely worth it. And the last part that I used from that build was the 650 watt Antec Neo Power Blue power supply. So far it's been doing great. I haven't had an issue with it. Then again, we're also not pulling an extreme amount of wattage. We only have a 760 for the GPU and an AMD CPU, which we'll get into next. For the CPU, I wound up on eBay searching around, though I did run into a guy selling one for 25 bucks. But I had already purchased it off of eBay. So I bought one off eBay for $38. It is an AMD Phenom 2 X4 925 at 2.8 gigahertz AM3 socket CPU, and 2.8 gigahertz but overclockable, and I was able to push it to about 3.4, I think is what I was doing the benchmarks at, hitting around 50 degrees Celsius on it. I didn't want to go too much higher. I probably could have done a lot more adjusting and pushed it roughly to 3.5 to 3.8 in between that range, but 3.4 with the performance I was getting, I was more than happy on it. I paid $38 for it off of eBay, came shipped from Korea, free shipping. Did take a little while to get here, but nonetheless it was here. And like I said, I ended up running into a guy selling one for 25 bucks, and I was kind of sad that I was like, damn, I already spent $38 on one, and I could have bought that guy's for 25. Either way, I got the CPU, and it's good. That's all that matters. It works. Next is the motherboard, which you guys saw me another Craigslist pickup as well. It has an extremely long name, so I'm actually going to be bringing up the manual so I can read the name off of it. It is Gigabyte Ultra Durable 3 GAMA 790 XT UD4P. So that's a unnecessary name, Gigabyte. What the hell are you doing? Either way, it's an AM3 Plus or AM3 motherboard, not AM3 Plus, AM3 only. But it does support DDR3 1666 is what they have it advertised as, and you can overclock it. I was able to push the RAM up to 1866, though I did not do it for the testing. I think it was only at about 1670. Because I was pushing the CPU several hundred megahertz upwards, so I didn't want to stress the RAM out as well. But overall, it was a decent motherboard. It does have very nice features like cooling on the VRM and other stuff like that. A lot better than the LGA 775 for the sheer fact that it's just newer. I mean, support for DDR3 alone was definitely a plus. So that brings us to our RAM. If you guys remember in one of the vlogs, I did talk about how I couldn't... I was holding off on the RAM because I wasn't sure what would work and what wouldn't work. And luckily I did, because I did run into some incompatible problems with certain types of RAM. And it's kind of weird on which RAMs were working and which ones weren't. I ended up getting a working pair. It's 8 gigabytes of Corsair Vengence 1866. Works just fine. I run it, like I said, around 1600-ish, depending on the overclock. It gives it a little bit more since I was pushing up the bus clock. But either way... I originally had tried the, what were they? Patriot memory 1866 that I had in my $350 build. I originally threw those in there, the 350 1440p build, and the computer just would not post with those sticks. I did get it to post one time with one of the sticks, but then it wouldn't do it again. It just only posted once, and then it crashed while loading the OS. And literally just for some reason those sticks would not work. I popped out a pair of Kingston Fury X or Hyper X or whatever memory, 1600 megahertz, worked just fine. So I was like, hey, maybe it's just the 1600 megahertz and it doesn't like 1866. That obviously wasn't true because I am running Corsair Vengeance, but I also tried out 8 gigabytes of DDR3 1866 Corsair Dominator RAM. So I pulled out some Corsair Dominator RAM, and this is 8 gig sticks, so it's a 16 gig kit. So two 8 gig sticks, that worked just fine. So it had no problem running 8 gigabyte sticks of 1866, but the Patriot 4 gigabyte 1866, it would not do. Like I said, luckily for me, I got a compatible set of RAM off of a guy off Craigslist. He originally posted it as 16 gigabytes. Turns out it was only 8 gigabytes though, but either way, he only wanted $25, which is saving me around $7 to $8 depending. For this exact model of RAM, I was probably saving closer to $15, but I'm saying for 8 gigs of RAM is 8 gigs of RAM. So if I would have picked up the cheapest 8 gigs, I probably could have paid around 31 to 32. So I did save a couple dollars there. And this RAM just does look cooler, and that honestly is not going to make any benefit to performance on how cool it looks, but it looks cooler. So, $25 for that, and I was okay with that. Next, we have the graphics card. We have a reference model Asus GTX 760. Now, I was able to pick this up off of Craigslist. The guy had it posted for $80. He was just a hassle to work with. Lack of responding. It took me about 4 days to actually get the card from him, and I ended up only paying $50 for it. So I got a GTX 760 for $50. Which yes is a very good deal, but if you guys just saw, I just picked up a 780 for $100, and I would much rather have the 780, but we are going to be using the 760 in this build because I've had it in there and that's what I purchased it for. And yeah, the overall, like I said, the guy was just kind of like flaky, very flaky, lack of responses, hard to get a hold of, and took forever to meet up with, but I eventually, through persistence and bugging the guy, finally was able to get that graphics card. So a GTX 760 is nowhere near a great card, but it's not necessarily a slouch when it comes to 1080p gaming, and we'll see that in the benchmarks when we get to those. Last part we have is a Seagate 2.5-inch laptop hard drive. It was 1 terabyte, and I went and picked it up for $20. So overall, it's a laptop hard drive. It's a little bit slower, 5,400 RPM, I believe. It was an older laptop, but for $20 for 1 terabyte, I couldn't really complain, and it got the job done. Once again, part of the reason these videos get delayed is because I end up reinstalling all the games onto the hard drives that I'm using, at least for the last 2 computers. That's what I've been doing. I need to get myself a better way of doing that. But I have ran into issues with games needing to be reinstalled, especially when using these older hardware. With the newer hardware, I don't run into this problem, but with the older hardware, for instance, the Q6600, I end up having to reinstall a handful of games, as well as 3D Mark Firestrike, because it just didn't like how it was installed, because I had put a OS drive in there that was already installed on a different computer, and then when I swapped it over to the older hardware one, it wouldn't boot. It would boot into Windows, but the game wouldn't boot. The game would just kind of sit there and lag, or I would get like a crash notice, especially with Black Ops 3 and 3D Mark. So I find it better on these older systems to definitely just reinstall everything, but it does take a while. You guys got to remember, I'm installing 300-400 gigabytes worth of games on there, as well as updates, patches, and all that good stuff. So that took a while, but once again, 1 terabyte, $20, couldn't pass it up. So that's our hardware list for right now. So let's hop into the benchmarks. I did more of a live benchmark. Instead of showing you guys like the average minimum frame rates, I kind of wanted to show you guys what it was like when I was actually playing it. Or actually just running the benchmark test in general. Those will have the results at the end of the benchmark, but there is some live gameplay in there. I tried to keep it short. I didn't want to make it too long, but hopefully that gives you guys a rough idea of what you can get out of this. Settings ranged all over the place, quite frankly, mostly mediums. Some were on high, some were on low. It really just depended on the game and the performance. I was trying to not dip below 60. That's what I was trying to do. For most of the games. Some of the games I just kind of ran at the high presets, or ultra, or low presets, or medium. Actually, I don't think I ran anything at low. You get the idea. It shows all the settings in the damn benchmark. So watch the benchmarks. We'll come back after. So on to our conclusion. The total price for this PC was, oh crap, I blocked it. Hold on, let me look. $193. I was pretty sure, I just didn't want to seem like I was bad at math by giving you the wrong number. So 193 bucks is what I put this PC together for. Comparing it to my $85 PC, you definitely, the bang for the buck is very diminishing by doubling the cost of the PC. We're not getting a hell of a lot more performance, but we do have a bigger hard drive. We do have 8 gigs of RAM instead of 6. We do have overclockable RAM up to 1600 megahertz, and it's DDR3, which is definitely a perk when it comes to most forms of productivity. So that's a plus. It does slightly help in gaming. The GTX 760 is a little bit more powerful than the 750 Ti, but believe it or not, it's not by much, but it is definitely more powerful. And I actually got the 760 for cheaper than I got the 750 Ti. So that's also something to consider. The quad-core AMD CPU does hold its own, and it does core for core beat out a Q6600. It's just newer architecture, newer motherboard, newer platform, several years newer than the Q6600 itself. So overall, good, especially when you overclock it. Now you can definitely get yourself a better Phenom chip. I just didn't want to break the bank and go over $200. But if I would have spent an extra 15-20 bucks, I could have got one that ran at 3.2 to 3.3 gigahertz. Now you do need to check your compatibilities with this, especially with your motherboard. The amount of different Phenoms they have out there, and the ones that you can find on eBay that are super cheap, will have things like extremely low L3 cache or no L3 cache at all, which is something you don't want. Personally, I wouldn't want, at least, especially if you're only saving $10. I would pay the $10 to have that. So you want to check your compatibilities, and you want to check the exact specifications of the CPU you're looking to buy when you're talking about AM3 socket motherboards, and which I did. It took me about 45 minutes to pick out the right CPU for the right price. But either way, that's my $200 budget build. I hope you guys enjoyed. Hope there will be more to come. I do have that in the background. I have a test bench, you guys. Look at it. It's a test bench. Holy crap. I have one now. So that hopefully will help with productivity, and so I don't have to build a computer on a motherboard box. That would be actually pretty nice. But there should be more stuff coming in the future. There might not be a budget build for my next video, but there will be more in the future, obviously. My next couple videos might be a little bit weird, but they will be computer related, and they will be fun, so look out for those. And I will probably get out of here because I'm hanging around too long. It's just getting awkward. So till next time, guys. Bye. Get out of my room now.